Hello, and we've got another exciting webinar for you tonight with Penny from the Community Environmental Radio Network, and they've been doing incredible work linking up radios. She'll tell us more about the Earth Week and linking radios across the country and community radios, and we're really hoping that this leads to the seeding of many more kind of climate and community resilient radio networks where we can all help each other out with whatever eventualities happen, sharing the news and information, solutions, and hopefully some fun music. Okay, Penny, over to you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, not at all. Thanks very much for inviting me, Phoenix. And it was actually really nice to sort of see some of you before this began. And it's clear that some of you, it looks like you don't necessarily know much about community radio. Some of you very obviously do. Really nice to see Nigel here, who I work with at BCfm. So I was planning to just share with you sort of my kind of journey in, I'm both an activist and I work in radio. And I was just going to sort of tell you about those two things and how they've been sort of unfolding over the last few years. Just a very brief bit of other background about me. I was in television for the first sort of half of my career and ended up in the science department at the BBC doing Tomorrow's World and then Horizon. And then after I had my two daughters, I worked at a primary school as an administrator for 15 years. Wanted to do something creative about sort of 10 to 12 years ago. So started working at BCfm, which is a community radio station in Bristol, working on a strand for older people, playing much older music, which was actually really good fun. And then in 2018, after the IPCC report, which I suppose might be the same for a lot of us, life just changed from that moment on when I read about it. And I became a sort of climate activist. I joined XR and did various things with them in Regen and also their media, but realised that a lot of what I was doing was sort of focusing on the media kind of not doing their job, and realising that I had a platform on a community radio station. So I thought, this is crazy. I should put these two things together. So about 5 years ago now, I started an environmental show called One Love, One Planet. Phoenix, could I possibly have, if it feels like countdown, could I have the first slide, please?
Yes, we can. I'm just lining them up. So let's just share screen. There we go. Look at that. See, smooth operation. That's your first slide. We were practicing this earlier, ladies and gentlemen. Okay.
I just couldn't do it. I could. It was very clunky.
It worked in rehearsal.
It's all good.
Yeah. So One Love, One Planet it's a weekly environmental show. There are lots on community radio stations around the country. One Love, One Planet goes out live on a Tuesday morning. To start with, it was just me. Since then, Shona Jemphrey took over, one of our Green councillors, after me. And then now we have a team of 5 people who take it in turns to do one show a week. A month, sorry, and Nigel is one of those. It's a magazine show. It's supposed to be really broad-ranging, intersectional. I learned when I was doing the show that absolutely everything that you turn to, you can view through a climate lens. So I've just tried to put here a sort of mixture of the kind of things that I talked about, and it's sort of similar now. I mean, there was the poet Caleb Parkin, We talked about the importance of language and words disappearing in living language land. We talked about inaccessibility, the intersectionalism of access to green spaces with Roy Kareem, plant music with Alex H. Duncan, keeping Bristol tidy. It's, as I say, I learned that everything you looked at can be included as part of an environmental show. And I'm glad to say it's still going strong. 5 years later, we won an award as well. We won a community media award, and BCfm, the BCfm management have said that no matter who is presenting it, that One Love, One Planet is now a permanent fixture in their schedule. The station manager said this to me. He said, it's now, we don't want to do without this show. So the second year of One Love, One Planet, things started to expand a bit. Sorry, I should just say, for anyone who doesn't know, community radio, just about every single person is a volunteer. So people are doing it for the love of it. Sometimes the station manager is paid, or a financial person might be paid. Otherwise, we're all volunteers. You are pretty much left to yourself, left to your own devices to do what you want to do. And as long as it's good, you can carry on doing it. It in sort of mainstream broadcast, television and radio, you tend to have to sort of prove your worth before you go on air. Community radio, it's kind of the other way around. People, as long as you're prepared for what you've got to do technically, or you've got support, people will let you try things out. And then if they don't work, they're pulled and you're given support. It's great. It's fantastic. I can't stress enough how different it is. It's so creative. It's so dynamic. You just come up with ideas, you come up with content, and those stations, they want that content. So it was an absolute joy to move to that from the BBC, much as it was great to work there. So, and this is a good example. Second year of One Love, One Planet, the COP talks were taking place in Glasgow. So I wanted to sort of up the ante a bit and get some more conversations going on the station on BCfm. So asked the management if we could have a whole week of events to coincide with the COP talks. And they gave their blessing for that. And the idea was that every show should do something, just have a little conversation about what was going on in COP, or maybe look at something that was more relevant to their show, be it sport, be it there's a show called Real Women, or if it's a music show, have a look at, just play some songs on the theme, whatever it might be. Loads of shows took part. It was really, really good, and generated kind of quite a buzz in the station. And also we were able to highlight for our listeners what the COP talks were, and possibly from a slightly different angle to what people would hear on the mainstream media, possibly a bit more realistic about how successful or not the talks were likely to be. So from that, actually, that's the point. Phoenix, would it be possible to have the second slide, please?
Yep, just on the order, that's the second one. Yep.
No, sorry, it's Our Earth Week. That's the one. That's the one.
That one? Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So the following year, I thought it might be a good idea to up the ante again, and it went nationwide. Wow. So we had about 50 stations. I just basically downloaded the Ofcom database for community radio stations and contacted every single one of the 350 stations personally. I sent them individual messages and had responses from about 100 of them. And then there were about 50 or 60 stations that actually took part. And you can see on the map there, they were, spread all over the country. It was amazing. It was so good to have these other stations involved, because it's like any project where people join and are new to something. Everyone was a little bit hesitant, and then the more they learned, the more, because basically it's a kind of free-for-all. Everyone was free to do their own thing, as well as all the content we were sharing, and it was just fantastic. They Shmoo in Aberdeen made a film. I made an audio trailer with voices from all the different stations, so all the different accents from all over the country. And then Shmoo turned it into a film in Aberdeen. Radio Platform in Cardiff hosted a live event at the Wales Millennium Centre, which was brilliant. A panel of 4 young people, all activists, all really good. Loads of stations did so many different things. So we ran it for a week. We sort of pulled our social media. We had a challenge, the Our Earth Week challenge, where you had to take a different challenge every day. So on the Monday, the first day, it was try not to use your car if you possibly can. One of them was try not to eat any meat today. Another one was don't buy anything, again, if you can. It was just, so that was quite good for social media and for sort of drumming up just this sense of sort of community amongst all the stations as well. And then last year, the theme was the sound of the wild. And we had, for example, a quiz. So every day there would be a different animal sound to identify. And then you would learn a bit about that animal, for example. And people really liked those. They really liked the sort of little quiz things because they're fun. We had live, you can see actually, Hop from COP. We were fortunate enough to have some messages from people who were at the COP talks, who I think also were giving us an insight that, again, you wouldn't necessarily hear on the news. So one of the people who sent us messages, she was amazing. She arrived in Baku at 3:00 in the morning, and she recorded a message there and then at the airport, having just arrived, and what it was like, and the fact that she was going to have to do a presentation in 6 hours' time. And then she talked about the food there, the fact that there was next to nothing for vegetarians. And she just gave a real kind of sense of flavour of the talks. Also sort of talking about the politics of it. So we got those every day from different people at COP. And then there were questions. There was one question per day, which we're asked by children, which again, people responded to really well. They really liked those. So you can see Sunday's question is there. Do you think we're doing enough to listen to young people's concerns about climate change? So different shows would take those questions. That question could be asked, the same question could be asked on every single show on the same station, and you'd get different answers because they're different.
Brilliant.
And on different stations around the country, all our different stations, we all have different demographics, we're all kind of different styles, so that was something that also worked really well. And this year it's happening again, Our Earth Week. I'm going to try and enlist stations from abroad this year, because World Radio Day was last week, and UNESCO have very obligingly supplied a map with stations all over the world with names and emails and what kind of collaboration they want. And the theme this year for World Radio Day was climate, communicating climate. So I couldn't believe it, because I've been starting to try and identify stations that I could get in touch with. And there is now this list of over 1,000 stations. So I'm starting to download that manually, which is taking forever, but it will be worth it. So as I say, I'm hoping there'll be an international dimension this year. And the theme this year is going to be water. And we are coinciding, we're going to be collaborating, I hope, with the Festival of Nature in Bristol as well. So that's a new element for us. And the way our Earth Week works is basically that we have a central library, an online library on Google Drive of audio, most of which I supply, maybe 80%, but then the other 20%, stations from all over the country, they put their stuff in. We had some fantastic stuff done by Bradford Community Radio, done with children from a local primary school, and they were asking themselves these questions that we had and then answering them, and it was just so good to hear from them. And I mean, just a whole host of features and reports and tons of stuff. So we have all this shared audio, the Our Earth Week library, and then there is also a handbook that I kind of create, which has just got it's just got support for presenters in the studio, so that if a presenter from a station is asked to talk about something that week during Our Earth Week, they can just open up the handbook and there'll just be some nuggets of things, and also the directory, the index of this wonderful audio library. So last year we had some amazing audio from sound recordists and musicians who all work with recording sounds from nature, and either creating soundscapes or they're creating music using these sounds, or they're just recording the sound for scientific purposes. It was a brilliant theme for radio, I have to say. So we had a lot of really good audio. So Our Earth Week will be happening.
You mentioned a handbook, sorry. Is there a link to that at some point? Yes. You could share a handbook? Great, carry on.
Yes, I can. It's actually, I was going to say it's on the CREN website. It's not actually, so I might have to dig that out. It's on Google Drive. I might have to dig that out later, and I can send it to you.
Great.
So out of Our Earth Week, last year, we got together periodically for Zoom calls and had chats fairly regularly. And quite a few of the stations said that they wanted somewhere to go that wasn't me. Everything's having to come from me. And I really wanted it not to come from me either. So I set up the Community Radio Environment Network, CREN for short. And this network, we have a website, which we set up last year. I mean, there is a slide for it, actually, Phoenix. Could we just, it's just showing you a bit of the front page. I tried to, that's it. Yeah, sorry, it's the blue one.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just going to click on the screen again. Yep.
Thank you. So yes, it's CREN is lots of different things. It's primarily a network. The website is there so that all the stations involved with Our Earth Week can find out everything they need to know online. So they haven't got to go back and trawl through all my emails. And as we go on year on year, I see that transferring more and more to the website and less from me, I hope. So there is lots of information on there about Our Earth Week. There is also a page on how to set up an eco show, because quite a few, the thing about community radio stations is, I think most people in community radio are in it because they love playing their music, or they want to do a sort of talk show. There's only a minority of people who are in kind of climate campaigning, climate and nature. So for those stations because some of those who took part in our Earth Week, they don't have an eco show. So I've put this stuff on CREN so that they've got somewhere to go and just get some advice about and some ideas on how to do it. It's also a network. It's a hub where it's for people working in sound, be that radio, talk radio, or music, or sound recording, and climate and nature. It's the intersection of those things. And I'm hoping to create a directory on CREN so that people can sort of find each other, because I'm introducing lots of people myself. I'm introducing lots of scientists who work in various different fields, one of whom, Steve Simpson from Bristol, who works with sound. So I introduced him to various sound recordists and musicians, and I want people to be able to find each other on CREN. So it will also be that kind of a network. It will also be an advocate for community radio and for giving community radio more funding, and the fact that it's going to get more and more important as time goes on. And if things get critical, and if we start getting more and more extreme events, it's going to be very important for that. And I've also started trying to see just what the sort of infrastructure is at the moment for when there are extreme events. And apparently BCfm, like most community stations, will be sent press releases and information from the local authority at the time. So, for example, if there's a big cold snap, BCfm is sent a protocol for how homeless people are going to be sort of catered for and looked after. So they get that kind of information. But what we don't seem to have access to is kind of regular briefings or meetings. And my station manager said today that is partly because we're volunteers and people are working and people can't go to them. So I'm quite interested in seeing if CREN can join those two elements up somehow. And it's one of the big things. I just think community radio needs to be ready to help. It's about prevention, it's about mitigation, it's about preparedness, it's about adaptation, it's about recovery. It's about all those elements in extreme events, and generally with the climate crisis. So that's CREN, and so that's painting a picture of my kind of what I've been doing over the last few years. And the final element in my kind of puzzle is that, having been part of XR and also part of community radio, and realizing that most people in community radio are not climate people, I've been thinking that here we have, with not just XR, with CEC and any other kind of national climate network, I just think it would be a really good thing if these networks could somehow join together. So in the case of climate emergency centres, for example, there are different options. I mean, I think it might have been Linda, or maybe it was me, who suggested, well, maybe climate emergency centres, CECs, could have their own online radio station. But I realise realistically that people are working hard enough to just run the CEC, and running a radio station, that's not what you're about. You're not about running a radio station. But what would be really good is if all the current CECs could if somebody from each one of those CECs could get in touch with their local community radio station and forge a relationship with them, so that someone from the CEC, from the hub, from the centre, can go on to the local station I don't know, once a week, however often you want to go on, to give listeners an update, just let people know what you're doing. It could be that if there are loads of things that you do at your hub, I mean, I was looking at the one in Carmarthen, they seem to have so many different elements there, for example, and just take one element and talk about that on the radio. Go on to whatever it might be, the breakfast show, the eco show, maybe it's about fashion, maybe there's a show that perhaps that would be kind of suitable for. But this would be, you know, basically the community radio network is there. It's there as a platform for people to use, and it's not being optimized. And the stations, they want content. They want people who've got things to say. People from the climate world, you know, you're so knowledgeable, passionate, articulate. You see the world in a different way to so many of the people on community radio. You're a different outlook, and you're much needed voices, I think, on community radio. So I think there's something potentially, it could be really exciting with CECs. Something we used to do we still do it on One Love, One Planet, and we do it a lot on our Earth Week, is voice messages, because these are easy to do. They don't mean you have to get together to have an interview. Whoever it is, so say it could be a CEC somewhere. If they've got a message they want to send a radio station, they can just send a voice message and say, hi, saying hello to the listeners of BCB, just want to let you know, Bradford CEC, we're doing this week. It's a much better way of doing it than just giving a presenter a spiel to do. And it's worked really well on our Earth Week, because we have voice messages coming in from here, there and everywhere, all different kinds of organisations. And so I'd like to do, we should be doing a lot more of that. And community radio can provide the climate movement effectively with a notice board. You know, this is something I'd like to do on BCfm, is that once a week at the same time, it's the notice board. And so people just send in their messages. So people will just tune in to hear about what's going on and what people have got to say. And what I was going to say to whoever out in here today, this evening, if you are wondering about getting involved with radio, I would just say try it, because it's an incredibly rewarding thing to do. Phoenix, actually, could we have the fourth slide, please?
Yep, there we go.
So here, this is the best way to find your local station is just put in your search engine, where is Bristol's? What are Bristol's community radio stations? Or whatever your local area is, and then have a look at them, and you'll probably see fairly quickly which one looks most like you. And if you just get in touch with them and tell them that you'd like to be part of this, even if you're not sure exactly what you want to do. Very often they'll have induction sessions where you can go along and find out about the station. So on BCfm, we have those. If you don't feel like talking, it doesn't matter, because we need researchers, we need producers. One thing I forgot to mention, another thing that CREN, another sort of our aim, long-term aim, is to get climate news embedded, more climate news embedded into the news items for community radio station regularly. Very regularly. I mean, I'd like to do it daily, make sure it's daily. And that's something that you could be involved with. If you don't want to go, be in front of the mic, you could supply the breakfast show with 2 or 3 news items. And in fact, I sent a message out to all the Our Earth Week stations yesterday and said, as a matter of interest, would you like to be contacted by a local climate campaigner, and what kind of things would you like from them? And I've heard back from about 12 or 13 stations saying, yes, they would love to. And be it for recorded features, be it for news items, be it for what's going on in your town or village, be it for if there's any kind of particular solution you want to talk about. But they're, very keen to hear from people. And if you do get in touch, there's always lots of help from stations. There's lots of training. As I said earlier, it's a really wonderful thing to be part of. It's so energizing because there aren't loads of talks about talks. There isn't time. There's no money. You just kind of get on and do your thing. And as long as we are subject to Ofcom guidelines, you do need to be trained, but things tend to happen relatively quickly. And you kind of, to a certain extent, get out what you put in. I've seen people put loads in and then they go off to the BBC, and get sort of paid work. But it's also just a really lovely thing to be involved with. And especially kind of getting to know your local area as well. And this is the point. A lot of the stations were worried that the climate campaigners were just going to be national. I was saying, no, they're local. So if you get in touch with your local station, because obviously that's the area you know best. And as I say, the sort of final thing for me is setting up this sort of emergency preparedness. But it's very early days at the moment with that. But if anybody listening here is involved with any of that kind of work, I'd be quite interested to know about that, because I'm only just starting out on this. I don't know who knows what and what's going on with community radio nationally and with the government. So I'm kind of just setting out on this, but I'd be very interested to know if anyone knows anything. I think that's me done. Is that, I think that's probably enough.
That was so much. That is so much. Absolutely incredible, Penny. What phenomenal work. I didn't realise the depth and the broadness of what you've been doing there fully. That is absolutely, hats off to your respect. That is incredible. You are putting so much information out through, as a networker, my mind boggles slightly there on you. You've gone out to 100 radio stations and you're supplying them with, and you're setting up an entire network there that is reaching thousands of minds, if not tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. So respect to you for that, and keep up the good work. And anyway, Climate Emergency Centre Network is going to help you in any way, and we'll help each other. There's various aspects. So if folks have got questions, down the bottom here, there's a heart, the bottom of the screen, that's a react thing, and you raise your hand like that, and that helps us see who's 1, 2, 3 on the university challenge. I'll come back to say more in a bit, but there's various things Penny said there that were really good about you can get involved in different ways, whether it's linking to your local radio or linking up with one in your area. Let's come over to Dottie for his question. Thank you, Dottie, who's the next radio show host.
Hi, I just had an idea I just wanted to share with people, which was I'm a sucker for Radio 3 Unwind at night, and I was thinking about what you were saying about nature recordings, and thinking that's another thing that CEC members could do, is they could go to areas that are under threat, favorite areas in the locally where they go for a calm, relaxing walk, whether it's by a river, in a meadow, forests, a wood, and then they could do an audio recording on their telephone, or ideally with a proper Tascam or Zoom microphone, if they've got such a thing, and then send that into the radio station, because that way they've got a 15-minute segment of lovely, relaxing sounds that someone could mutter some sort of, guru-like statements over. But, that might be quite a nice thing. And also it would then maybe highlight areas that are under threat. For example, like in Oxford, we've got a constantly having beautiful woodlands bulldozed and stuff. And if people hear the sound of that space, even if they don't go there, it's not near them, they might think, oh, wait a minute, why is that noise gone? Oh, it's because somebody's destroyed our local woodland, and they would feel more annoyed about it if they actually could hear the sound of it. The second thing I wanted to say is that I think it's really great what you've done. My experience in Oxford was quite, in some ways a bit negative, and I just wanted to pick your brain with a question, which is, if your local area station, because quite a lot of these local radio stations, so-called community ones, are kind of like run by umbrella groups that are a bit more difficult to get through to, or have managers or owners that are like not terribly lefty or environmental. Are there any tactics you would recommend to people in terms of getting around those kinds of people or those kinds of hierarchies?
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. And I think the first thing, what I discovered was that it makes sense to fish out the person who's on the schedules. I used to look at all the schedules of the shows if there was nobody obvious, and I would go for the one that looked most likely to respond to what I was asking. So, for example, in some cases, it would be a Sunday Christian show, because everything else was kind of music, and nothing seemed to be kind of anything sort of reflective or political, or so I would always go for an individual, so not the management, but get in touch with one of the individual presenters. That's the first thing. I also, in a couple of cases, asked people who were local to the station to contact them as listeners and ask them if they were taking part in our Earth Week. And if they weren't, could they please consider it? And in one case, I think it worked. I'm trying to remember now the exact. There are so many sort of different stations, and my head's kind of swimming slightly trying to remember about it all. But the other element about these bigger stations, and in fact, BCB, Bradford Community, they were quite strong on this. They said, we need this stuff to be bite-sized. We need it to be really fun. We don't want any long, serious think pieces. We don't want loads of information. So I think you have to kind of tailor what you're providing to people as well. But it certainly seems to be the case that if you say to people, the stuff we have is really entertaining, then that tends to draw them in. Because really the point about our Earth Week is not, it's not about 7 days. My point about doing this was trying to get stations to do the 7 days, but then hopefully do something for the other 51 weeks of the year as a result. And in fact, I mean, Voice FM, for example, they set up a green breakfast show after doing our Earth Week, which is now still going strong. And Zan, who runs it, I mean, he is quite a strong environmentalist, but he said it was a real kind of springboard to doing it. So yeah, that is the idea. It's not just for that week. I'm trying to just generate interest and just kind of let people, make people realize that it's actually really interesting and incredibly varied. And it's not just all, I think people think that you're going to just talk about recycling or, I don't know, air pollution, or, they think you're going to talk about the same few subjects. And it's, I just say to them each time, no, you just take any subject you like and you just view it through that lens. So yeah, I think short, fun, if you're going to go to the management, and if not, go via a person who looks most likely to be responsive. And as for your thing about the sort of recorded sound, yes, it's such a good idea. We had David De La Haye, who's a sound recordist last year, who he's made that's what he does. He makes sound recordings, and he had some fantastic stuff of seals, which we played. A lot of stations played late at night because there's about 25 minutes of it. And he said he just recorded it, and they were just lying in a boat, just listening. He just put hydrophones down. He didn't know what was there, and they just listened to these seals. And he said it was just really relaxing. So we've done quite a lot of soundscape stuff. And I used to do a thing called press pause as well, which was like a sort of guided relaxation. I used to do that on One Love, One Planet, which that seemed to be the most popular bit actually at one point. It's a really important part of it. Sorry, that was a very
no, that's brilliant. That's really good. I mean, you got so much knowledge there from the BBC level of doing things through to community radio and radiating out to so many groups. Richard, has got a question or a comment or feedback over?
Well, yeah, it's just a question, really. I mean, with radio, how do you know how many people are listening to you, and how do you know what kind of impact you're having, or is that an impossible question?
Well, it's become more difficult since more people are listening online, because prior to that, we were able to extrapolate from the main sort of stats that commercial and the BBC radio got from their listening figures, because there was always a little bit at the end that nobody knew who that was, and that was community radio. So we used to know, and at that point, for example, BCfm was getting up to about 20,000 listeners, which obviously, when you think about the BBC stats, it's tiny. But then I think that's 20,000 people. It's huge. I mean, 2,000 people is huge. 200 people is a heck of a lot. You give a talk to 20 people. Each time I just think it actually doesn't bother me too much, that whole side of things. But it is important. Obviously, you can get a slight sense from the number of people who follow stations on Facebook. So, for example, BCfm has got about 10,000 followers on Facebook. And when I was doing One Love, One Planet, when I was presenting it regularly, I was amazed because I would meet people in the southwest, in Devon and and the outskirts of Bristol, and they say, "Oh yeah, no, I've listened to that show," and it was really reassuring, actually, because sometimes you do wonder whether you're just talking into a huge void. But I discovered that I wasn't, which was really nice. And then also, if you do a podcast, at least what you've said can be listened to again. And people were listening, that the listening figures weren't bad actually for the podcast. So again, you don't feel that all your hard work is wasted, because it used to be quite hard work for me because I put quite a lot into it. Some people don't. Some people just wing it. They just turn up on the day and just wing it. And you can do that. But I didn't, as it goes. I put quite a lot in. So it's quite good. Podcasts are great because it just means they can stay there. There's a One Love, One Planet podcast series on Spotify, and online on Apple and on the BCfm website. And there are lots of other shows, as I say, lots of eco shows all over the country doing similar kind of stuff.
Maybe I'll jump a question in there, and obviously anyone else stick your hand up or comment, feedback or question. We have been talking to Max, who we were going to link up with you. You were going to chat more and about possibly making these webinars into kind of podcast / radio show. That we've had some incredible speakers and presenters, from Natalie Bennett to all sorts who've come on and shared real important knowledge. And it does seem that the podcast thing goes further, podcast and radio, and your point that you never know who is listening and how far you're going and how far the ripples spread out. So, podcast it's kind of a new word. I haven't fully got my head around it. It's basically, a podcast is an audio radio show, audio file that's just done in what makes a podcast specifically more than just a radio show? Is there any particular things on that?
Yes, there is. For starters, you have to take out all the music that you play, which is a right pain. They're quite different. They're quite different, and it took me a while to learn it, because to start with, I knew I'd have to take the music out, so I did that, and I left everything else pretty much as it was, because I thought, well, I want people to know what the show is. So I said hello. I took out the time specific stuff, and the stuff that was hyper local to Bristol I removed as well. But somebody from the States listened to my very first one. He said, you've just got to cut to the chase. You've just got to get rid of all that stuff at the beginning. So that's one of the key things about podcasts. They don't mess about. They just get straight to it. So now I just record a very, very short introduction. So that's the main thing. You get straight to it. You're not fixed to any kind of format or length. It's how long is a piece of string. You know, some of the OLOT podcasts are 15 minutes, because if that's all there is to say, then that's how long it's going to be. Some of them are 40 minutes because it was a really long, interesting conversation, and you just want to, record the whole thing. I mean, personally, I have a slight problem with podcasts, because I think they're brilliant on one level, but if everyone just listens to podcasts, it kind of worries me, because it becomes a bit like an echo chamber, because you're choosing what you're going to listen to, instead of just being exposed to things on live radio that you would never have heard otherwise. I mean, it's like the amount of stuff I've heard on Radio 4 that is just amazing and so interesting, that I would never have chosen to listen to, because I didn't know of its existence. So I have a slight problem with podcasts on that level. But for things like the CEC webinar, I think it's a great idea, because you've got some really good content there, and it would be a shame for it to just not be heard again.
Let's work together with Max and yourself and your experience, and get that out there, because there's so many great, from Ecocide Foundation to Donut Economics to people talking about, library of things, all sorts of people come back and say, oh, we're now looking to do a library of things in this area. And you can say, here's the podcast, here's the webinar. I think Dottie's got a question now.
Yeah, hi again. I just thought, when you were talking about listener numbers and stuff, and for some reason it just made me think about phone-in shows.
Yeah.
Because that's one thing that's very popular on local community radio, is phone-in shows, and again, like CEC members. I mean, maybe I don't think you mentioned this, but I mean, that's another great intervention you can make, is that you can at any time, like whatever the phone-in show conversation is about. Some of them are like free for what do you want to say. Some of them are about a topic, but you can always, like, if you're a good politician, you can always. You always know how to, like, wrangle the topic round to talking about something about the environment, or about issues that were that are kind of like about local things. So I think that would be something that people who are listening to this could maybe act on, is like, look at the schedule of your local radio show, find out when they do things. And often I used to do phone-in shows. I think I only ever got like 3 people ringing in. I stopped doing it because it was too thin on the ground, and I was like in the middle of the night. I always hoped to be midnight caller, but it never quite happened that way. But I think that's a really good strategy.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think they're great. But as you say, they're quite hard to do, and they're quite risky to do if people aren't phoning in. I've never dared do them personally, but I think they're fantastic, because they're just full of energy as well. Might see if we can do one for this year's Our Earth Week. Actually, maybe we could give it a go.
Yeah, I mean, I think as long as you've got a fallback. I was more suggesting that people who are listening from CC Network could ring into their shows. But I think it'd be great to do one at BCfm. And I think as long as you've got like a bleep button and someone in the production booth who can cut calls, it's all right. I was trying to manage it on my own, which did have exciting results a couple of times, but. It's definitely something that I think it really definitely makes. It's something people would really be excited to listen to when it's actually people ringing in, and if you have a good topic and a good like a good rapport with the listeners already.
Yeah, I mean, it would be quite good to maybe have those things that people are always arguing about. So there are these topics that people always give up, like why should we bother to do anything when China and India aren't doing those kind of things. You always get people ringing in, and so maybe it would be a chance to explore those things with a bit more length anyway.
I think what you've outlined there, Penny, a number of strategies and things, it's really impressive and incredible what you've done there. But, I think one of the best takeaways to me is groups can adopt their local community radio. I mean, there's one thing setting up your own radio station, internet or others on through linked with your community centre, your project. That's quite a major thing, but that'd be great to see. But adopting your local community radio group. So you mentioned that was an Ofcom. I don't know whether we can find the link for that, but an Ofcom, look up your local community radio, just Google it. And if we can provide them with material, I went to a book writing workshop years ago, and the guy said, let me tell you a secret. In America, they got all these TV and radio shows, and they're all desperate for content. They all want something. So if we as environmentalists and community things and community groups can go there and say, we've got this content about this project, these things we're doing, and we want to have a discussion about this, then they will take it on board. Are there others out there who's watched tonight who are involved with any radio projects so far, or have done anything in the radio realm? Question to the University Challenge panel. Nigel, already last few bits really, or last 5 minutes, guys.
I've had an idea for a show which I want to do in a couple of weeks' time. On the 1st of May, we're going to have an election in Bristol for the West of England Combined Authority Mayor. And a lot of people don't know what on earth that is. They've been living in this area, but this obscure mayor is going to be up for election. So what I'm trying to do is I'm contacting the 4 different candidates, Conservative, Labour, Lib Dem, Green, and I want to go out with my recorder and meet each of them and give them 8 minutes or something to talk about, if they were elected, what would they do to address climate change, depletion of nature, pollution, and some local issues like transport, because that mayor is responsible for transport in this area. And also the other big issue here, which is the expansion of Bristol Airport. Would they support it? Are they going to oppose it? And so on. And so make like a hustings and have each of the candidates, one after the other, a recording of what they say. And it so happens that I emailed them on Monday thinking, oh, they're never going to come back to me. But actually one of them did, and they're going to go out and record the first one tomorrow.
Brilliant. That's great. Fantastic.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, I always used to take my Zoom recorder out with me, and I would just go to demos. Just, if anyone's going, if there are local demonstrations, if there are local, woodlands under threat, riverways under threat, or, because as you're right, if you've got a good recording and you take it and send it to a community radio station, I'm not, I had that happen to me, and people would just send me stuff, and I'd be like, okay, this is great. If it's already edited for brevity, that's brilliant. And I think that's a really good thing. All members of CEC could be going out to things that they're already attending and making recordings. It's good to interview people. It's good to get crowd noises, do a little I'm here, this is what's going on kind of piece. And because obviously a lot of community radio stations are strapped for cash and don't have the membership, or people who are not able to go out and do those things. And if people are able to do it, it's really good to get those things documented.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. It's that local, it's that sort of local knowledge, which is, and so for things like river pollution, if we have people constantly feeding back to the station to tell, keep people in touch with what's happening to the rivers, to the coast, things like monitoring air pollution, where are the really bad bits today in our city or town. The more we can get going, the idea that your community station is the place for you to go to find this stuff out, because you won't, now that so many BBC stations are no longer local, they're regional now. So this is where community radio needs to step in. This is the beauty of it. It's hyperlocal, but we can connect up and be national as well.
I think, in fact, there was a while ago, they cut a whole load of local BBC radios because Alan from the Hull Climate Emergency Centre, he had a regular Eco Time show for about 20 years. And then he said, they've just cut it. They've cut a load of local stations. We are in beginnings of conversations with there's various, London emergency climate resilience planning strategies kind of things going on, and we want to link more with those groups. And I think Penny's illustrated a lot there today from what you've done with Earth Radio Week is incredible. It'd be good to have a link for the UNESCO World Radio Day and when that is. I love the thing you said about just simple things, because a lot of people feel challenged by the bigness of the climate and environment community challenge, but just for one day to not use your car, for one day to not eat meat, and for one day to not buy anything is three beautiful, simple takeaways that anybody can do in their life kind of thing. And, we are consuming the planet at a rapid rate. We need to share more, consume less. Last point for me, and then any other last points or questions or feedback from anyone else before we wrap up soon. But there was something back in the early 2000s called indie media, and people were trained up as like citizen journalists, not really that trained, but anyone could put their news up. It was before Facebook. And it would be really nice if people could get a little bit of training. I think there were some little cartoons we used to have for video. But if people can go out and put together a short radio show, and like you were just describing, go to whatever it is, a project, a demo, or anything. If you can put it together nicely and send it to the community radio, they will use some of this because they need, they need the input. And something like, community citizen journalism and community radio link-ups. The more we can do that, particularly building climate resilient networks, if things do go a bit, one way or another, and let's help to network solutions through radio. You can reach out to thousands and thousands of minds. So incredible what you're doing there, Penny. Let's see if anyone else on final questions, feedback, or what you thought about tonight before we come over to Penny for sum ups. Have you been inspired to contact your local radio station? Can we get a wave?
There's also quite a few people saying some nice things to Penny in the chat, by the way. Got very quiet for once. This has been really opened my eyes. Should be ears, surely. Thanks for your amazing efforts, Penny, and for coming here to share. And then there was informative and inspiring. Fav, love Penny. Thanks for all your work, and brilliant, informative and stimulating.
Brilliant. Is there a link to you mentioned looking up the locals? It wasn't UNESCO, it was the other one. That was something Ofcom. Is there a link to looking up Ofcom? Or would you tell people to Google local community radio? Was there an Ofcom list of radio stations you mentioned? Penny? Not sure on that one. Penny, are you still with us?
Can you hear me?
You froze.
Penny's frozen. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Penny, I hope you've been back in a minute or two. Otherwise, we'll just say, right, well, that was a very informative one. Is that Habiba?
Yeah, just a quickie.
Yep,
Have we got time?
Yeah, go for a quickie. We're going to wrap up soon. Penny,
I didn't mean it to come out like that, but I think a radio station is the one thing we really do need. We've got an overdose of screens and phones and everything, but people listen to their radios in the car. They listen to them a lot in the house in the evening, sometimes all through the night, and it keeps a flow going. It keeps a passage open, and it's sort of like a healthy channel for this kind of up-to-date information that will improve people's lifestyles.
That's brilliant. That's a really good point, Habiba. Actually, we are bombarded by way too many screens, and being able to just listen and pass on info. Mary Ellen. Just say Penny Bean's back. Mary Ellen, go for it.
Penny does beam back because I wanted to say thank you to her, but also wanted to question how. I think it's a great idea to tune in on to topics that people argue about, especially things like, oh, there's too many people in India and China, oh, look at the pollution from there, etc. But if that was happening, how do we not allow that negativity to come to the top and actually bring the solutions to the surface. And also to say that you've inspired me to get in touch with my friend Farah at Radio Sangam, which is in Huddersfield. She's had Bernadette Valelli on there before, and she's had myself on there speaking about the climate and disability issues and stuff. So I'll get in touch and maybe get her to come and speak as well. But what do they do on their radio, and how we can influence that?
Inspiration for action, ladies and gentlemen. I think Penny's beamed out. I'm not sure she's got reception issues, but I think we'll wrap it up around there. But just to say, it's absolutely incredible what they've done with the radio, Earth Week and the Community Radio Environment Network. So get in touch with your local community radio. Let's see how we can get more environmental, more community. Not just about the environment, it's about, community and social issues as well, and the solutions to them. Thanks, Mary Ellen, for mentioning my favourite word. I am a solutionary, and we need to get people talking about the solutions. We need to give people a bit of hope. We need to show all the good things that are going on, as well as the doom scrolling. We need to come away from things with a bit of hope and things. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to put a comment in the chat, or we're going to stop recording here, but if you want to stay around and chat for 10-15 minutes, we usually have a bit of a chat, discussion, whatever, and afterwards. But thank you very much for your precious time.
Thank you, Phoenix.